The transport ship descended through the gleaming energy barriers surrounding Nexus Prime Station, and Ambassador Jihei Park pressed her hand against the viewport. The station was massive beyond comprehension. A structure that could swallow Earth's moon and still have room for a dozen more. Crystalline spires jutted from its surface like frozen lightning, while streams of ships from 1,000 worlds flowed in and out like schools of fish. Jihei straightened her formal diplomatic uniform and checked her reflection in the darkened console screen. Black hair pulled back severely. Face calm and neutral. No hint of the nervousness that churned in her stomach. She had prepared for this moment for 5 years. Learning alien protocols. Studying centuries of galactic history. Memorizing the complex web of alliances and grudges that defined council politics. The docking clamps engaged with a shudder that ran through the small vessel. This was it. First contact had happened 50 years ago, when a Vrex exploration ship had stumbled across human colonies in the outer territories. Since then, humanity had been petitioning for council membership, waiting for their chance to join the galactic community as equals. Today was that chance. Jihei stepped through the airlock into a corridor that defied physics. The walls seemed to shift between solid matter and pure light. Gravity fluctuated with each step, adjusted for the comfort of whatever species happened to be passing through. She saw beings that looked like walking plants, creatures made of living metal, things that existed partially in dimensions her eyes couldn't quite process. None of them paid her any attention. Humans were still curiosities here, barely worth noticing. A floating drone approached, its mechanical voice cold and efficient. Ambassador Park, follow. It turned and glided away without waiting for confirmation. Jihei followed, keeping her pace measured and dignified, despite the urge to gawk at her surroundings. The council chamber was even more impressive than the intelligence briefings had suggested. The ceiling soared hundreds of meters overhead, lost in artificial clouds that occasionally crackled with energy. Thousands of seats rose in tiers, most of them filled with representatives from species she had never seen before. At the center, elevated above all others, sat 3 massive thrones. The crystalline Vrex occupied the left throne. Overseer Vethix was roughly humanoid in shape but composed entirely of transparent geometric structures that refracted light into dancing rainbows. Its voice resonated through the chamber without need for speakers, each word chiming like struck glass. The center throne held a Melnari, Tide Singer Kelros, whose body was encased in a sphere of water, held together by some technology Jihei didn't understand. Tentacles as thick as tree trunks drifted lazily in the containment field, and bioluminescent organs pulsed along its bulk in hypnotic patterns. The right throne belonged to the Krith war leader Scrathix. The insectoid creature was all sharp angles and gleaming chitin, with 4 arms ending in blade-like appendages, and a dozen eyes that tracked Jihei's approach with predatory focus. These were the rulers of known space, the triumvirate that had maintained order for 10,000 years. Jihei walked to the designated speaking platform and bowed at precisely the correct angle for addressing the council. Years of practice made the gesture smooth and respectful. "Honored council," she began, her voice steady. "I come before you as the representative of humanity, to formally request membership in the Galactic Council and admission into the greater community of civilized species." Vethix's crystalline form shifted, light refracting differently. "We have reviewed your petition. We have studied your species. Tell us, Ambassador, why should we grant humans a seat among the established powers?" Jihei had rehearsed this speech 1,000 times. She spoke of humanity's scientific achievements, their adaptability, their desire to contribute to galactic civilization. She highlighted human art and culture, their diplomatic traditions, their potential as trade partners and allies. She emphasized cooperation and mutual benefit, carefully avoiding anything that might sound like boasting or threatening. The council listened in silence. When Jihei finished, that silence stretched uncomfortably. Then Vethix laughed. The sound was like wind chimes in a hurricane, beautiful and terrible. Around the chamber, other representatives joined in. a cacophony of alien amusement that made Jihee's skin prickle. Cooperation, Vethix said, still chiming with mirth. You speak of cooperation, as if you have something to offer. Kelross's tentacles undulated, and its voice bubbled through the water sphere. We have reviewed your history, human. Constant warfare among your own kind. You poisoned your own world, and barely saved it. Your technology is primitive by our standards. Your military is laughable. Your worlds are few and undefended. Scrathix's mandibles clicked rapidly, the Krith equivalent of laughter. You are prey animals who learn to use tools. Nothing more. Jihei kept her expression neutral, though inside she felt a cold knot forming. This wasn't going according to plan. The intelligence reports had warned that the Council could be condescending, but this level of contempt was unexpected. Nevertheless, she said carefully, humanity has survived and thrived, despite our challenges. We believe we can contribute to the Council's mission of maintaining peace and prosperity. Oh, you will contribute, Vethix said, and its tone shifted from amused to businesslike. We have prepared membership terms for humanity. A holographic display materialized in front of Jihei. She began reading through the document, and with each line, the cold knot in her stomach grew heavier. Military autonomy to be surrendered to Council oversight. All human military vessels to be registered and commanded by Council officers. Development of new weapons technology prohibited without Council approval. Resource taxation set at 80% of all extracted materials. Trade agreements to be managed exclusively through Council intermediaries, with humans receiving 15% of profits from their own goods. Mandatory relocation of human populations from 17 colony worlds deemed strategically important to Council interests. Estimated displacement: 400 million people. Genetic modification programs to improve human lifespan, intelligence, and compliance with Council directives. Mandatory participation for all citizens. These weren't membership terms. This was vassalage. Slavery. With bureaucratic language. Around the chamber, Jihei noticed some of the minor species representatives quietly standing and leaving. They knew what was happening. They had seen it before. The Council made impossible demands, waited for the desperate species to beg and plead, then magnanimously reduced the terms to merely exploitative instead of utterly crushing. It was a game they had played for millennia. Jihei finished reading and looked up at the triumvirate. Her face remained perfectly calm, showing nothing of the rage and calculation warring inside her mind. These are your terms? She asked quietly. These are our generous terms, Vethix corrected. We are offering you a place in civilized society. You should be grateful. We are willing to elevate such a primitive species. Jihei carefully set down the datapad containing the terms. She placed her hands behind her back, standing at ease in a posture that was second nature from her years of military service before becoming a diplomat. I see, she said. And if humanity declines these terms? Scrathix's multiple eyes focused entirely on her, and its mandibles spread wide in a threatening display. Then, humanity remains isolated, unprotected, alone in a dangerous galaxy where accidents happen to unaffiliated worlds. The threat was barely veiled. Accept slavery or face destruction. Jihei nodded slowly, as if considering. Around her, the remaining representatives watched with pity. Another species, about to be broken by Council power. She took a slow breath and met Vethix's crystalline gaze directly. Then, I would like to present humanity's counterterms. The Council chamber fell silent for a moment, then erupted in a fresh wave of laughter. This time, it was louder, more mocking. Several representatives didn't even try to hide their amusement at the humans' audacity. Vethix's crystalline form pulsed with colors that Jihei's cultural briefings identified as contemptuous humor. Counterterms? You believe you are in a position to negotiate? I believe that negotiation implies both parties have something to offer, Jihei replied calmly. Since you have offered your terms, It seems only fair that humanity presents ours. Kelross's tentacles writhed faster in its containment sphere. Fair? Child species. You understand nothing of how galactic politics function. The strong dictate terms. The weak accept them. This is the natural order. Then let me present our understanding of fair terms, Jihei continued, pulling up her own datapad. Full council membership with equal voting rights. No resource taxation beyond standard trade tariffs applied equally to all member species. Complete military autonomy with mutual defense obligations. Free movement of human citizens throughout council space. No forced relocation. No genetic modification programs. She looked up from the datapad. In exchange, humanity offers technological exchange, trade partnerships, and military cooperation against external threats. We seek partnership, not subjugation. The laughter this time was deafening. Scrathix stood from its throne, forearms spreading wide. Military cooperation? What military? We have seen your fleets, human, obsolete vessels with primitive weapons. You have 47 colony worlds, barely defended. You possess no strategic resources we cannot simply take. You have nothing we want, except your submission. Around the chamber, even species that had looked sympathetic earlier were now shaking their heads or making gestures of disbelief. A small group of minor species representatives who had started to return to watch the proceedings were already leaving again, not wanting to witness the humiliation that would surely follow. Jihei felt a familiar sensation wash over her. It was the same feeling she had experienced during the Mars Rebellion 15 years ago, when she had been a naval commander rather than a diplomat. The moment when an enemy underestimated you so completely that they sealed their own fate. She had been briefed extensively before leaving Earth. The High Command had been very clear about her mission parameters. Try diplomacy first. Present humanity as reasonable and cooperative. Give the Council every chance to accept humans as equals. But they had also given her authorization codes, contingency plans, instructions for what to do if the Council proved to be exactly what the intelligence agencies suspected. An exploitative empire that maintained power through intimidation and control. I see, Jihei said softly. Then let me ask you this, Overseer Vethix. What if humanity simply refuses your terms and chooses to remain independent? Vethix's form shifted through several colors. Then you remain unprotected, isolated. And if your worlds happen to be raided by pirates, or if your ships mysteriously disappear in deep space, or if your colonies experience unfortunate technical failures in their life support systems, well, these things happen to species without council protection. There it was, the threat made explicit. Submit, or be destroyed, through deniable actions. A memory flashed through Jihei's mind. She was 23, fresh out of the Naval Academy, serving as a junior officer on a patrol ship near the Neptune colonies. They had encountered a smuggler vessel and attempted to board it for inspection. The smugglers had laughed at their outdated ship, made jokes about how easy it would be to blow the patrol vessel apart. They hadn't known that the outdated ship was actually a testbed for humanity's first cloaking technology. They hadn't known that 3 other ships were already in position, invisible and locked on target. The smugglers had laughed right up until the moment they found themselves surrounded and outgunned. Sometimes, Jihei had learned, the best tactical advantage was letting your enemy believe they had already won. I see, she said again. And this time she allowed a small smile to touch her lips. It was not a warm smile. Then, I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding in this negotiation. Kelross's bioluminescent organs flashed in patterns that indicated confusion mixed with irritation. What? Misunderstanding? We have been perfectly clear. Submit to our terms, or face the consequences. The misunderstanding, Jihei said, her voice remaining calm and level, is that you believe you are negotiating from a position of strength. The laughter started again, but Jihei spoke over it. You have reviewed our history. You have assessed our military capabilities. You have calculated our strategic value and found it wanting. You believe you understand humanity's position in this galaxy. She activated her datapad, and a holographic display materialized above the speaking platform. It showed a standard map of human territory, 47 colony worlds clustered in a relatively small region of space, defended by a modest fleet of vessels that even Jihye had to admit looked unimpressive compared to Council warships. This is what you see when you look at humanity, Jihye said. Limited expansion. Primitive technology. Minimal military presence. You see a species that made first contact 50 years ago and has been slowly, cautiously expanding ever since. Vethix's crystalline form had stopped pulsing with amused colors. We see reality. Human. What else is there to see? Quote, what else is there to see? What if I told you, Jihye said quietly, that everything you have seen was carefully curated for your benefit? The laughter died away. Scrathix leaned forward on its throne, multiple eyes narrowing. Explain yourself. Jihye's fingers moved across her datapad. The holographic display shifted. New markers appeared on the star map. Then more. And more. Hidden military installations in supposedly empty systems. Fleet anchorages in regions the Council had never explored thoroughly. Sensor networks spanning hundreds of light years. Defensive platforms around strategic choke points. And ships. So many ships. Sleek vessels that bore no resemblance to the clunky cruisers humanity operated in public. Carriers that dwarfed anything in the Council's records. Weapons platforms that registered energy signatures the Council's sensors had never encountered. First contact, Jihye said, was not the Vrex exploration ship finding our colonies. First contact was humanity, deciding it was finally time to reveal ourselves. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Every representative stared at the display, trying to process what they were seeing. Impossible, Kelros bubbled. Our sensors would have detected such extensive development. Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Jihye replied. Humanity has been traveling between stars for nearly 3 centuries, not 50 years. We had already established extensive colonies and infrastructure long before we made official first contact. When your exploration ship entered our territory, we made a choice. She looked up at the triumvirate, her expression still calm but her eyes hard as stone. We could have remained hidden, could have continued expanding in the shadows while you remained unaware. But we wanted to join the galactic community properly, openly. RP. Some of this, we wanted to believe that the Council was what it claimed to be. A force for cooperation and peace. Jihye's voice dropped lower. So, we created a fiction. We pretended to be a young, naive species, making first contact. We showed you only our oldest, most obsolete vessels. We claimed colonies that were actually centuries old as newly established. We acted the part of primitive newcomers, hoping for guidance from wise elders. Why? Vethix's voice had lost all trace of amusement. Why this deception? Because we studied you first, Jihye said bluntly. We watched how the Council operated. We saw what happened to species that approached you from positions of strength. They were treated as threats, isolated, sometimes mysteriously weakened by internal rebellions that seemed to appear from nowhere. But species that approached you as supplicants, as weak petitioners, were allowed to join. Exploited and controlled, but allowed to join. She gestured at the holographic display. We gambled that if we appeared weak enough, non-threatening enough, you might actually agree to fair terms. That rationality and mutual benefit would outweigh your desire for domination. Yehi's expression hardened. We were wrong. Scrathix's mandibles clicked rapidly, but not with laughter this time. You are claiming this display is real? That humanity has hidden this level of development for 50 years? I'm not claiming anything, Jihye said. She pulled up a communications interface on her datapad, and entered a long authorization code. "I'm showing you," Jihei said. Across the galaxy, in systems the Council believed were empty or unimportant, human vessels began decloaking. The holographic display in the Council chamber began updating in real time. In the Helix Nebula sector, 12 massive battle carriers shimmered into visibility, their hulls crackling with dissipating stealth fields. Near the Andros trade routes, a defensive network of weapon platforms suddenly appeared on sensors, revealing a choke point humanity had quietly controlled for decades. In orbit around a supposedly uninhabited world in the Kepler region, a shipyard complex larger than Nexus Prime Station itself materialized. And those were just the beginning. Around the Council chamber, representatives scrambled to check with their home governments. Personal communication devices lit up like a star field as reports flooded in. Human ships were decloaking everywhere, not making any aggressive moves, simply revealing themselves. Ships that had been hiding in plain sight, disguised as asteroids or masked by sophisticated jamming technology. Stations built into dead worlds and hollow moons. Entire fleets that had somehow evaded detection for half a century. Kelros's tentacles had gone rigid in the water sphere. "This is impossible. Our sensor networks span the entire galaxy. We would have detected such extensive militarization." "Your sensor networks are impressive," Jihei acknowledged, "but you've grown complacent. When was the last time the Council faced a peer competitor? 1,000 years? 2,000? You scan for known threats using known technologies. You never thought to look for someone actively trying to hide from you, using methods you didn't know existed." She pulled up another display, this one showing sensor logs. "Every time a Council ship entered a system where we had hidden assets, we fed false data directly into your sensor arrays. You saw what we wanted you to see. Empty space. Natural phenomena. Nothing worth investigating. Your crews believed their instruments. Why wouldn't they? They had never encountered a species with better stealth technology. Vethix stood from its throne, crystalline form blazing with colors. Jihei's cultural database identified as alarm and anger. "You have been spying on us. Infiltrating our space. This is an act of war." "No," Jihei said firmly. "This is prudent caution. We didn't infiltrate your space. We were already there, long before you knew we existed. We watched you interact with other species. We saw how you operated. We learned from the mistakes of others who approached you honestly." She gestured to the empty seats where minor species representatives had been sitting earlier. "Where do you think they went? Those representatives from species you hold in vassalage? They left because they knew what was coming. They've seen you do this before. Offer impossible terms, wait for desperation, then magnanimously reduce the exploitation to merely unbearable levels. They didn't want to watch another species fall into your trap." Scrathix's chitin plates rattled, a sign of agitation. War leader was not just a title. The Krith had earned their place on the Council through military dominance, crushing a dozen species before agreeing to join the Triumvirate. Scrathix had personally commanded those campaigns. "You speak of learning from others' mistakes," the war leader hissed. "But you are making the greatest mistake of all. You reveal your strength before ensuring victory. Now that we know you exist, we can crush you. The full might of the Council has never been defeated." "That's true," Jihei agreed. "The Council has never faced a united opposition, but that's because you've been very clever about isolating and eliminating threats before they could organize. You've maintained power not through overwhelming force, but through careful manipulation and strategic intimidation." She pulled up a new display, this one showing troop and fleet dispositions throughout Council space. "Your military is spread thin, maintaining occupation forces on 40 subject worlds, patrol routes across thousands of systems, garrison fleets protecting your key infrastructure. Your actual response capability is limited. If you pulled forces together for a major offensive, you would leave vulnerabilities elsewhere. Larden. We haim. Untenses. We haim don't." Kelros's bioluminescent organs pulsed rapidly. You have done more than spy on us. You have infiltrated our command networks. We have done our homework, Jihei corrected. We've spent 50 years observing, analyzing, and preparing. We know your fleet compositions, your response times, your strategic doctrine. We know which of your admirals are competent and which earned their positions through political connections. We know where your supply depots are, how long it takes to mobilize a major force, and what your contingency plans look like. She paused. We know all of this because, unlike you, we didn't grow complacent. We didn't assume our superiority. We prepared for the possibility that diplomacy might fail. Vethix's form had cycled through several colors and settled on something Jihei's database suggested, indicated, calculated assessment, rather than emotional reaction. The overseer was thinking strategically now, moving past shock and anger. You have revealed your presence, Vethix said carefully. But revelation is not victory. Even if your fleet capabilities match our own, which I doubt, you cannot win a war against the entire council. We have thousands of worlds, billions of soldiers, industrial capacity beyond your comprehension. A war would be devastating for both sides. But we would ultimately prevail through attrition. You're absolutely right, Jihei said, and saw surprise flash across all three council leaders' faces. A direct military confrontation would be catastrophic. Billions would die. Planets would be destroyed. The galactic economy would collapse. It would take centuries to recover. She stepped closer to the platform's edge, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. That's why we don't want war. That's why we spent 50 years pretending to be weak and naive, hoping you would see reason. That's why I'm standing here offering partnership instead of ultimatums. Because, despite what you think of us, despite your contempt for our primitive civilization, we actually mean what we say about cooperation. Jihei's expression hardened. But understand this. We will not be vassals. We will not surrender our autonomy. We will not allow you to exploit us. We've offered you equal partnership, fair terms, mutual benefit. Those terms are still on the table. And if we refuse? Scrathix demanded. Jihei was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but carried absolute conviction. Then we begin liberation operations. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted questions, accusations, demands for clarification. The triumvirate attempted to restore order, their voices competing with the chaos. Jihei waited for the noise to die down before continuing. You have 40 subject species under your control. Species forced into vassalage under terms similar to what you offered us. Species that provide resources and labor and soldiers for your empire while receiving minimal benefits in return. We will offer each of them a choice. Remain under council control, or accept protection and partnership with humanity. Kelross's voice bubbled with rage. You would start a galactic civil war. No, Jihei corrected. You would be starting it by refusing to negotiate fairly. We're offering you a choice. Accept our terms for equal partnership, reform the council into an actual cooperative federation, grant autonomy to species that want it, or refuse, and watch your empire crumble as those species realize they have an alternative. You cannot protect 40 worlds scattered across the galaxy, Vethix stated. We don't need to protect all 40 at once, Jihei replied. We just need to protect enough of them long enough for the rest to realize you're not invincible. Your power is built on the belief that resistance is futile. Once that belief cracks, once species see that you can be challenged successfully, the entire structure becomes unstable. She pulled up another display, showing supply routes and economic dependencies. 12 of your subject species provide critical resources for your industrial base. 8 of them manufacture key components for your military vessels. If even half of them stopped providing those resources, your ability to sustain a major military campaign would collapse within 2 years. You have thought this through, Vethix admitted, its tone completely devoid of the earlier amusement. We've had 50 years to think it through, Jihei said. 50 years of watching and planning and preparing. We didn't want this confrontation. We wanted partnership. But we prepared for war, because we knew what you were. She checked her chronometer. You have 1 hour to deliberate. After that, the human fleet begins moving to offer protection to any species that requests our assistance. I suggest you use that time wisely. The council chamber emptied rapidly as representatives rushed to contact their governments. The minor species wanted instructions. The major powers wanted assessments. Everyone wanted to know if the human ambassador was bluffing. Jihei stood alone on the speaking platform, hands clasped behind her back, watching the chaos with an expression of perfect calm. Inside, her heart was racing. She had just committed humanity to a path that could lead to galactic war. High Command had authorized her to take this step if necessary, but authorization and wisdom were not always the same thing. The triumvirate remained on their thrones, clearly communicating with someone through private channels. After several minutes, Vethix gestured, and a privacy field shimmered into place around the central chamber, cutting off Jihei from any external communication. Clever, Kelros said, its tentacles moving in patterns that suggested grudging respect. You present yourself as seeking peace while making threats. You claim you don't want war while preparing to dismantle our civilization. I present the truth. Jihei replied. We genuinely prefer cooperation. But we won't accept exploitation. If those positions are incompatible with your existence, then perhaps your civilization deserves to be dismantled. Scrathix's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The war leader had been silent since Jihei's declaration, studying tactical displays on its personal console. Now it spoke, and its tone was different from before. Less dismissive, more analytical. Your ships are impressive. Your stealth technology is clearly superior to ours. Your strategic planning is competent. But there are elements that don't align with your claimed capabilities. Such as? Jihei asked. Your displayed fleet numbers are substantial but not overwhelming. You claim 3 centuries of development, yet your infrastructure, while hidden, is not significantly larger than what a species might achieve in 50 years of intensive expansion. Either you are still hiding significant assets, or your claims are partially fabricated to create uncertainty. Jihei allowed herself a slight smile. The war leader was sharp. An astute observation. Additionally, Scrathix continued. While you clearly have superior stealth technology, your weapon systems appear to use principles similar to our own, merely refined. Your ship designs show evolutionary improvement rather than revolutionary advancement. This suggests your technology base, while impressive, is not centuries ahead of ours, as you implied. Also correct, Jihei admitted. Vethix's crystalline form pulsed with colors, suggesting confusion. You admit to exaggerating your capabilities? I admit to strategic ambiguity, Jihei said. Yes. Some of our claims were designed to create uncertainty, to make you hesitate before committing to conflict, to encourage you to seek diplomatic solutions rather than military ones. That's what intelligent actors do when facing potential conflict. They maintain enough ambiguity to deter aggression while pursuing peaceful resolution. She stepped forward, closer to the thrones. But here's what isn't exaggerated. Our stealth technology is real and functional. Our fleet exists and is operationally deployed. Our intelligence penetration of your networks is genuine. And most importantly, our willingness to follow through on our commitments is absolute. Free. 1. You would sacrifice human lives to free species you've never even met? Kelros asked. We would sacrifice to establish the principle that exploitation is unacceptable, Jihei said firmly. Because we know that if we allow you to force us into vassalage, we condemn humanity to generations of servitude. Better to fight now, when we have advantages, than wait until you've neutralized our strengths and absorbed our technology. She gestured at the displays still showing human fleet positions. And yes, we would fight for the freedom of other species, not out of altruism alone, but because enslaved, exploited species make unreliable allies. We want partners who choose cooperation freely, who contribute because they benefit, not because they're forced. That creates stable, productive relationships. Your model creates resentment and resistance. Idealistic nonsense, Scrathix hissed. Power maintains order, fear ensures compliance. This has worked for millennia. Has it? Jihei challenged. How many rebellions have you crushed in those millennia? How much of your military strength is dedicated to maintaining internal control rather than external defense? How many resources do you waste on surveillance and occupation that could be used productively? She pulled up economic data. By our analysis, the Council spends 40% of its total economic output on maintaining control over subject species. 40%. Imagine what you could achieve if those species were willing partners instead of conquered subjects. Imagine the innovation, the growth, the advancement that could happen if you weren't constantly putting out fires of your own making. A lovely fantasy, Vethix said. But reality is more complex. Species are self-interested. Without strong central control, there would be chaos, competing interests, endless conflicts. Like humanity experienced throughout our history? Jihei asked. Yes. We fought among ourselves. We had wars and conflicts and terrible mistakes. But we also learned from them. We developed systems to manage competing interests without requiring totalitarian control. It's messy and imperfect. But it's better than your model. She paused. And more to the point, we're proving that other models can work. You claim your way is the only way to maintain order. We're offering to demonstrate an alternative. That's what really threatens you. Not our military power, but our ideas. The privacy field suddenly dropped as a messenger drone entered the chamber. It transmitted data to the triumvirate, then departed. All three council leaders studied their displays in silence. Our intelligence services have completed their assessment, Vethix finally said. They confirm that human vessels have decloaked in 47 systems. They confirm that stealth technology is functional. They have identified approximately 300 major warships, plus supporting vessels and infrastructure. They have also, Kelros added, identified inconsistencies, suggesting some of your displayed assets are decoys or fabrications. Jihei shrugged. I never claimed everything you're seeing is real. Strategic deception is standard military doctrine. You do it. We do it. Everyone does it. The question isn't whether some of our displays are deceptive. The question is whether you're confident enough in your assessment to risk war. You are gambling, Scrathix observed. Gambling that we value stability enough to negotiate rather than fight. That we fear the unknown variables enough to accept compromise. Yes, Jihei agreed simply. I'm gambling on your rationality. On your ability to recognize when the cost of victory exceeds the benefit. On your understanding that even if you win a war against humanity, you'll be weakened enough that other threats might emerge. I'm gambling that you're wise enough to choose partnership over pride. Vethix stood from its throne, crystalline form blazing with complex colors that Jihei's database couldn't fully interpret. And if we choose war, then you'll win, Jihei said bluntly. Eventually. You have superior numbers and industrial capacity, but it will cost you dearly. Decades of conflict, trillions of lives, and at the end, you'll have destroyed humanity but proven to every other species in the galaxy that the Council can be fought. That resistance is possible. You'll create the very instability you claim to prevent. She met Vethix's gaze directly. Or you can accept our partnership, reform the Council into something better, prove that you're capable of evolution and growth, show the galaxy that the strong can choose fairness over That would secure your civilization for another 10,000 years. The three council leaders exchanged glances, some form of communication passing between them that Jihei couldn't intercept. Finally, Kelros spoke. You said we have 1 hour. That time has not expired. We will deliberate. I'll wait. Jihei said calmly, though inside she felt like screaming. Everything now depended on whether the council valued stability over pride, whether they would choose the rational path or let ego drive them to destructive conflict. She had done everything she could. The rest was up to them. 58 minutes later, the council chamber began to refill. Representatives returned to their seats, conversations dying away as everyone sensed that something momentous was about to happen. Jihei remained on the speaking platform, her posture unchanged, giving no sign of the tension coiled inside her. The triumvirate sat on their thrones in silence, and for a long moment, no one spoke. Then, Vethix stood, crystalline form blazing with light. We have deliberated, the overseer announced. We have consulted with our military commanders, our intelligence services, our economic advisors, and the representatives of our member species. We have reviewed all available data regarding humanity's capabilities and intentions. Jihei's heart hammered in her chest, but her face remained calm. We have also, Vethix continued, conducted a strategic assessment of potential conflict scenarios. The results are clear. A war with humanity would be devastating to both sides. While we would ultimately prevail, the cost would be measured in trillions of lives and decades of reconstruction. Kelros rose next. More significantly, such a conflict would destabilize the entire galactic order. Our subject species would see that the Council can be challenged. Our enemies would see weakness in our commitment to prolonged warfare. The certainty that maintains our civilization would shatter. Scrathix stood last, and when the war leader spoke, there was something in its tone that Jihei had not heard before. Respect. You have demonstrated strategic planning, operational capacity, and most importantly, the willingness to accept catastrophic losses in pursuit of your goals. These are not the characteristics of a prey species. These are the characteristics of an apex predator. The war leader's multiple eyes focused on Jihei. You were correct about our doctrine. We have grown complacent, fighting enemies who were already defeated in spirit before the first battle began. You are not such an enemy. Fighting you would be like the ancient wars before the Council established dominance. Brutal, uncertain, transformative. We do not wish such transformation, Vethix said. Therefore, we agree to negotiate revised terms for humanity's Council membership. The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. Several representatives stood, demanding clarification. Others activated communication devices, reporting to their governments. The minor species representatives who had fled earlier began returning, drawn by rumors that something unprecedented was happening. Jihei allowed herself to exhale slowly. Not victory, yet, but an opening. I am pleased to hear that, she said formally. However, humanity's terms are non-negotiable. Equal partnership, full autonomy, and reform of the Council's treatment of existing subject species. We will not join an organization built on exploitation. Unacceptable, Kelros declared. You ask us to dismantle the very structures that maintain galactic order, to grant autonomy to species that require guidance and oversight, to abandon millennia of proven governance. Then we have nothing further to discuss, Jihei said calmly. The human fleet will begin liberation operations as scheduled. Wait. The voice came not from the triumvirate, but from the chamber seats. A representative of the Drellian species stood, their feathered crest raised in a gesture of urgency. Ambassador Park, if humanity offers liberation, the Drellian people would accept your protection. Another voice joined in. The Haskeen worlds would also seek partnership with humanity under fair terms. More voices rose, A cascade of species representatives standing and declaring their willingness to leave council control if an alternative existed. The triumvirate watched in what Jihei suspected was horror, as the very scenario she had described began to unfold before their eyes. Vethix raised a crystalline appendage, and amplified sound filled the chamber. Silence. The voices cut off. The overseer's form cycled through colors that suggested barely controlled rage. "You see what you have done?" Vethix demanded, focusing on Jihei. "You have introduced chaos, broken the order we have maintained for thousands of years. Even if we were to destroy humanity tomorrow, this cannot be undone. You have shown our subjects that alternatives exist." "Yes," Jihei agreed. "That was the point. You can kill the messenger, but you cannot kill the message. The idea of freedom, once introduced, cannot be suppressed by force alone. You can try, but it will consume resources and energy for generations." "Adapt how?" Scrathix asked. The war leader sounded genuinely curious, rather than hostile. "Voluntary association," Jihei said. She pulled up a new display, this one showing organizational charts. "Transform the council from an empire into a true federation. Species choose to join and can choose to leave. They contribute what they wish to contribute and receive benefits proportional to their participation. Some species might maintain close association. Others might prefer looser affiliation. But everyone has agency. And humanity enforces this new order?" Kelros asked skeptically. "Humanity guarantees it," Jihei corrected. "We don't want to rule anyone. We don't want an empire. We want a galaxy where trade and cooperation happen because they're mutually beneficial, not because they're enforced at gunpoint. We'll use our fleet to ensure that no one species can dominate others. That includes you, and that includes us." She looked around the chamber at all the assembled representatives. A balance of power, instead of a hierarchy of control. Competition kept in check by mutual interest in stability. Innovation encouraged because there's no central authority suppressing it. This is how humanity organized itself after centuries of conflict. It works. "It's messy," Vethix observed. "Yes," Jihei agreed. "But it's resilient. Hierarchies are efficient until they fail, and then they collapse catastrophically. Distributed systems are inefficient but stable because no single failure can destroy them. You've built a civilization that works perfectly until it doesn't. We're offering you a chance to build something that can survive imperfection." The three council leaders exchanged long glances. More private communication was happening that Jihei couldn't access. Finally, Vethix spoke again. "This is not a decision we can make in an hour. This requires consultation with all council species, revision of treaties that have stood for millennia, complete restructuring of our civilization." "I understand," Jihei said. "We're not demanding instant transformation. We're demanding commitment to the process. Release your subject species from vassalage terms immediately. Grant them autonomy to decide their own futures. Then, we can take whatever time is needed to build new structures for cooperation." "And if we agree to this?" Kelros asked. "If we commit to restructuring the council along the lines you describe, what guarantees do we have that humanity will not simply become the new dominant power?" Jihei smiled slightly. "You have the guarantee that we're telling you our capabilities and limitations right now. Unlike you, we're not hiding our strength or pretending to be something we're not. We've shown you exactly what we can do. We could have conquered while hidden. We could have manipulated from the shadows. Instead, we're offering open partnership." She gestured at the displays, still showing human fleet positions. "And you have the guarantee that we're still a relatively young species. We don't have your numbers or your industrial base. We have advantages in certain technologies, but you have advantages in others. We need partners as much as you need reform. This is genuinely mutual interest, not disguised domination." Scrathix made a sound that Jihei's translator interpreted as thoughtful humming. You said earlier that you have been preparing for 50 years, that you've studied our civilization and learned from our mistakes. But you also said you wanted us to choose cooperation freely. These seem contradictory. That's not. You manipulated the entire first contact scenario to create this moment. Yes, Jihei admitted. And that was perhaps dishonest. But consider the alternative. If we had approached you 50 years ago showing our full strength, what would have happened? Would you have negotiated fairly? Or would you have seen us as a threat to be eliminated? We chose deception over immediate conflict, buying time to understand you better, and to prepare our own defenses. She paused. Was that manipulative? Absolutely. But it was also rational. We were new to a galactic stage, controlled by an exploitative empire. We adapted to the situation we found. Now we're offering to move past that deception into genuine partnership. Yes, we hold advantages right now. But advantages are temporary. Technology spreads, strategies get copied, power balances shift. We want to establish principles that will outlast our current advantages. Vethix was silent for a long time. When the overseer finally spoke, its voice had changed. Less authoritative, more contemplative. You mentioned earlier that we laughed at your reasonable demands. That we mistook your restraint for weakness. I have been considering those words. The crystalline being descended from its throne, something Jihei had never seen happen in any of the historical footage she had studied. Vethix approached the speaking platform, stopping just at its edge. What you said was accurate. We did mistake your kindness for weakness. We have done so with many species over the millennia. Some accepted exploitation. Others fought and were destroyed. You are the first to have hidden teeth sharp enough to threaten us while still offering an open hand. The overseer's form pulsed with colors that Jihei's database suggested indicated something like acknowledgement or respect. You asked what guarantees we have that humanity will not become the new dominant power. But perhaps the real question is, what kind of dominant power would you be? You have demonstrated that you could have attacked us at any time during the past 50 years. That you could have destabilized our civilization from the shadows. Instead, you gave us every chance to negotiate fairly. You revealed your strength only when we refused to see you as equals. Vethix paused. This restraint, this commitment to diplomacy even when you held military advantage, this is not something we have encountered before. Perhaps it is evidence that your model of cooperation could actually function. Jihei felt a weight lifting from her chest. This was it. The moment when pride gave way to pragmatism. Then do we have an agreement? She asked carefully. We have the beginning of an agreement, Vethix replied. Subject species will be released from vassalage terms, effective immediately. They may choose their own governance and association freely. The Council will begin restructuring negotiations to transform into a voluntary federation. Humanity will have full membership with equal status. In exchange, Scrathix added, humanity will provide technological sharing agreements, military cooperation against external threats, and a guarantee that you will not exploit your current advantages to dominate the transition process. Agreed, Jihei said, feeling genuine relief for the first time in hours. And, Kelros added quietly, you will help us understand what true cooperation looks like. Because clearly, we have forgotten. The Melnari's tentacles moved in patterns that suggested something like humility, an emotion Jihei had not expected from the proud council leaders. It would be my honor, Jihei said formally. Then she smiled. Though, I should warn you that human-style cooperation involves a lot of arguing and disagreement. We're not very good at following orders or accepting hierarchy. It's going to be frustrating. Vethix's crystalline form pulsed with colors that might have been amusement. I suspect we will learn to tolerate frustration. The alternative, as you so effectively demonstrated, is far worse. We have we. The overseer turned to face the assembled representatives. Let it be recorded that on this day, the Galactic Council enters a new era. We acknowledge that our previous methods, while stable, were built on exploitation and control. We commit to transformation into a true federation of equals, and we welcome humanity not as subjects, but as partners who have earned their place through strength tempered by wisdom. The chamber erupted in conversation again, but this time the tone was different. Not shock or fear, but excitement and hope. Minor species representatives were already caucusing, discussing what autonomy would mean for their people. Major powers were assessing what this transformation would mean for their positions. Jihei stood quietly amid the chaos, finally allowing herself to feel the exhaustion that had been building for hours. She had done it. Humanity had secured not just membership, but had fundamentally altered the structure of galactic civilization. Later, aboard her shuttle returning to Earth, Jihei recorded her report to High Command. She kept it simple, professional, just the facts of what had transpired. But at the end, she added a personal note. They laughed at our reasonable demands. They mistook our desire for peace as weakness. They believed that because we approached them with open hands, we had nothing in our clenched fists. They were wrong. She paused the recording, looking out the viewport at the stars. The greatest strength is choosing not to use your power. The greatest wisdom is knowing when restraint serves better than force. We showed them what humanity being kind looks like. We made them understand that our diplomacy, our patience, our willingness to negotiate, those weren't signs of weakness. Those were evidence of strength so secure that we didn't need to prove it with violence. She smiled slightly. They understand now. Kindness, backed by the capacity for overwhelming force, is not weakness. It's civilization. Jihei ended the recording and closed her eyes. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, not as conquerors, not as subjects, but as equals who had earned respect the hard way. By being strong enough to choose peace and wise enough to prepare for war. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.